Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls III, set upon the island of Vardenfell on the eastern coast of Tamriel, is a monumentally great game, and arguably the best title Bethesda has ever produced. While most people were introduced to the Elder Scrolls through Skyrim, myself included, it is an absolute travesty to skip over this masterpiece. I only recently began playing Morrowind over the past couple of years, but since then I have jumped into the deep end of this game. The world is breathtaking. The environments are both beautiful and brutal. The depth of choice when creating your character is phenomenal, allowing you to craft exactly the playstyle you want. And of course, the story and lore throughout this entire game is superb. And in my opinion, it's never really been matched by any other Bethesda title. Honestly, any fan of RPGs like Baldur's Gate, Kingdom Come Deliverance, or tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons would feel right at home within the confines of this classic. But I won't lie to you, the game is old, having been released in May of 2002, and it has a bit of a learning curve, especially if you're really only used to playing modern games. Therefore, I've decided to make this ultimate beginner's guide to Morrowind, to help new players experience this amazing RPG, and to avoid some of the major pitfalls that can really put people off from giving this wonderful game the playthrough it truly deserves. And the best way to learn is at the beginning. Awaking on a ship after a rough night of sleep, you'll be greeted by the main man Jib. Like Skyrim and many other RPGs, you'll start Morrowind by naming your character. A guard will then lead you up the decks of the ship, while dialogue boxes appear showing you how your controls work, but you'll be able to check these out later on in the options. Stepping off the ship, you'll be approached by an Imperial guard who will ask,
"You finally arrived, but our records don't show from when."
Now you get to choose your race and appearance. And it's also where things start to get a bit more complicated, especially if your only Elder Scrolls experience is through Skyrim. There are 10 races to pick from in the character creation menu: Nord, Orc, Redguard, Argonian, Breton, High Elf, Imperial, Khajiit, Wood Elf, and Dark Elf. All of these races have different bonuses to skills and different special abilities, which you can see under skill bonus and specials. And some races are better suited for certain playstyles than others. However, they all have some flexibility and any race can be used for any playstyle, but some are going to require more effort than others. For beginners, I would pick a race that already has stats in line with how you want to play the game. Keeping it simple since this is a beginner's guide, let's talk in terms of the 3 most common Elder Scrolls playstyles: Warrior, Mage, and Thief. Nord, Orc, Redguard, and Argonian would generally be good for a warrior character, your classic sword and shield knight, an axe-wielding barbarian, or a loyal spearman. Breton and High Elf would be really good for mage characters, considering their innate magic bonuses and skill set being mostly magic-focused. Imperial, Khajiit, and Wood Elf would be good for thief characters, ranging from a suave merchant elite to the classic cat burglar, or even a stealth archer. Dark Elves are very flexible and can be used for all 3 of these types of characters, having skill bonuses that would be very helpful in almost any playstyle. Considering Dark Elves, or Dunmer, are the native population of Morrowind, I bet this was probably an intentional choice by Bethesda. We'll go into how to stat out your character and utilize their special abilities later in the video, but first, we need to understand a bit about attributes. Attributes are the measurement that define a character's inherent abilities, like being smart or really strong. They aren't skillful in any particular way, but they will help your skills. The attributes utilized for characters in Morrowind are strength, intelligence, willpower, agility, speed, endurance, personality, and luck. Strength affects your weapon damage, carrying capacity, maximum fatigue, and starting health. Intelligence increases your maximum magicka and affects alchemy and enchanting results. Willpower affects your spellcasting success rate, your resistance to magic, and your maximum fatigue. Agility affects your ability to hit with a melee weapon and to not get hit with a melee weapon, your resistance to knockdown or stagger, and your ability to sneak, pickpocket, lockpick, and block. It also affects your max fatigue. Speed affects how fast your character moves. Endurance affects your starting health and how much health increases as you level up. It also affects your max fatigue and how much your fatigue regenerates. Okay, I keep saying fatigue. It's basically your stamina bar, but with a few more steps. We're going to go into that soon, I promise. Personality affects how well you persuade or intimidate people, and how well you can buy and sell items. Luck is kind of weird. It isn't connected to any skill directly, but it's used in every single skill check in a small way, but not really in a meaningful way. it's honestly much better to focus on the other attributes, as they play a much bigger part in how well you can do things in Morrowind. Okay, I just dropped a lot of info on you, but it's actually super simple to understand. You want to hit stuff really hard? You want high strength. You want to be able to take a ton of damage without losing all your health? You want high endurance. You want to be the best spellcaster in all the land? High intelligence and high willpower are a must. And if you want to be a super sneaky thief and sell off all those ill-gotten gains, max out that agility and that personality. Those are just a few examples, but I think you get the idea. Okay, let's quickly touch on skills too. They're honestly a lot easier to understand than attributes, but it'll help to have a bit more info before going further in your character creation. Skills are basically the measure of how well your character performs actions in the game. There are 27 skills in total, and basically everything you do utilizes some kind of skill, from sword swinging to spellcasting to just running and jumping around the map. Basically, if you want to perform any action well, you want to increase the relevant skill. Having high longsword means you'll be able to hit enemies more effectively. Having high acrobatics means you can jump higher. Having high security means you can pick harder locks. Now, why have we gone through all this information before we've done anything besides pick what race we want to play as? Well, the next step in your character creation is to pick a class, and having a bit more knowledge of skills and attributes is going to go a long way at this point. After picking your race and appearance, you'll be led inside the Excise Office, and you'll need to talk to Secutius or Gala, where you'll be able to pick your class. There's a preset list of 21 different classes that you can choose from, and they're all viable options, but for my first-time players watching this, I'm going to walk you through the custom class option, because it's a bit easier to see how everything fits together. There's also a questionnaire that you can fill out, and a class will be chosen for you based on your answers. It's honestly an interesting way to start a playthrough if you have a character's mindset thought out, but not really their skill set thought out. Okay, how do we define our class? You'll first need to choose a specialization, either combat, magic, or stealth. You'll get a +5 bonus to all skills that fall within these categories, and they'll level up faster. You'll then pick 2 preferred attributes, strength, intelligence, what we just talked about. And these attributes will get an additional 10 points allocated to them, giving you a solid bonus right at the start. Now we need to pick skills. In Morrowind, your skills are divided into major and minor categories. Major skills get a starting proficiency of 30 out of 100, and minor skills get a starting proficiency of 15 out of 100. All other skills fall under the miscellaneous category and will have a starting proficiency of 5 out of 100. So if you really want to be good with long swords right at level 1, or destruction magic, or sneaking, you'll want to choose those as your major skills. After defining your class, you'll be asked to pick a birth sign. This is an additional bonus to your stats or a once-a-day use power that can be very beneficial, particularly at the beginning of your playthrough. There's 13 birth signs in total. The warrior sign fortifies your attack by +10, which is a great burst of damage in the early game. The speed sign gives you fortify speed, +25 on self. For heavy armored characters, this will help offset some of the initial weight and slowness of your armor before you get a chance to improve your fatigue and speed stat. The mage sign fortifies your magicka by 0.5 times your intelligence attribute. This will improve your initial magic pool, especially if you select a character that has a high intelligence multiplier like Breton and High Elf by default. It can also help round out a race that has a lower intelligence if you want to try out an orc wizard or something. The apprentice sign fortifies your magicka by 1.5 times your intelligence attribute, but it comes with a weakness to magicka by 50 points. This is going to greatly improve your magic pool, even more so than the mage sign, but it does have the drawback that it's going to be more difficult to deal with spell attacks. You can certainly offset this drawback later on through enchantments and spells, but it's going to increase the difficulty at the beginning of the game. The Atronach sign gives you a spell absorption ability 50 points on self, and it gives you a 2 times intelligence modifier, but you get the stunted magicka debuff, which means you cannot regenerate magicka by resting, only by potion and shrine blessing. This is the biggest boost to your magicka at the beginning of the game, and spell absorption is going to be useful the entire time you're playing, making combat with magicka users far easier. However, the drawback is quite steep, and honestly, you really shouldn't do this as a brand new player. The Lady sign gives you a Fortify Personality 25 points on self, and a Fortify Endurance 25 points on self. This is great for selling stolen loot, and great for getting better prices in general. You also get that nice boost to survivability, which is awesome in the early game. The Lover sign gives you a Fortify Agility 25 points on self, and you get the ability to paralyze a target for 60 seconds, with the drawback of having your fatigue damage by 200 points. Increasing agility is great, because it decreases an enemy's ability to hit you, while also increasing your ability to hit them. Paralyzing your target is a great panic button ability if you want to avoid combat or take a few cracks at someone while they can't resist, but it does have a hefty penalty of damaging your fatigue by 200s, probably draining your fatigue bar, making you less likely to succeed on your own actions, but this can be easily mitigated with a spell or a potion. The Shadow Sign gives you the power to turn invisible for 60 seconds. This is great for early game thievery, but it's going to become redundant later on as you increase your sneak ability and find enchanted items to either grant invisibility or the Chameleon spell. The Thief Sign gives you Sanctuary for 10 points on self, making you just ever so slightly harder to hit. This is probably the worst Birth Sign, and I really don't recommend you take it. Dark Elves by default get 50 points of Sanctuary as a racial ability, so if you really want that power, you can just go with them. The Serpent Sign gives you the ability to poison a target for 3 points for 30 seconds, but it also damages health on you for 30 seconds. Not a great choice considering how many enemies are resistant to being poisoned, if not flat out immune to the damage. And the self-damage isn't great either. The Lord Sign gives you the ability to restore your health 2 points for 30 seconds, but it comes with the drawback of a weakness to fire 100 points on self. Not a great choice either. The healing spell is outclassed easily by low-level spells, and there's plenty of enemies that utilize fire magic or fire enchantments. The Ritual Sign's pretty cool. It gives you the ability to turn undead 100 points for 30 seconds, and you can restore your own health 100 points. This is a pretty interesting sign if you want to go for like a pilgrim or a monk playthrough, battling the undead of Morrowind and healing yourself through divine magic. Finally, we have the Tower Sign, which gives you the power to detect animals, enchantment, and keys for 60 seconds, which is a unique power, but I've never really found use for it personally. But it also gives you the ability to open 50 points on touch, which basically means you can open a lock up to level 50 instantly. The open spell can be very useful for characters not wanting to utilize security or magic for any kind of lockpicking. Once you've selected your class and you've chosen your birth sign, Zacucius will ask you if everything is in order, and you'll see a screen with all your stats. If anything looks off or you misclicked, you can change it now. Be careful though, because you won't be able to change it again during this playthrough. While we're here, let me touch on fatigue real quick. You may think fatigue is just your stamina bar, and you're partially correct. However, there's a bit more to it than that. You see, everything in Morrowind is a dice roll. Your damage, your chance to hit a target, your success rate when casting a spell, all of it is just a roll of the die. Having skills and attributes for the thing you're trying to do will greatly increase your odds of success. But your fatigue is also factored into that equation. Keeping your fatigue bar close to full will increase your chances of succeeding when using a skill, while having your fatigue bar empty or even less than half is going to lower your chances of success. Basically, if you're tired, you're worse at everything you do. Try and get 8 hours of sleep, folks. Before you enter combat, try and cast a spell or even speak to a merchant. It's important to have your fatigue bar as close to full as possible by either using a potion, a spell, or you can just wait an hour. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking around. You've made it through the hardest part and gotten farther than a lot of people when they first gave this game a shot. Now, let's use the tools we've learned to get some basic characters up and running, starting with the Humble Warrior. Alright, every good swordsman needs to start with a solid name. There we go. When we select our race, we're going to go with Redguard, because they start with a plus 15 Longblade skill and the Adrenaline Rush ability, which fortifies agility, strength, speed, and endurance by 50 points. It also fortifies health by 25 points for an entire 60 seconds. This is super good, and it will pretty much hold up throughout your entire playthrough. You also get resistance to both disease and poison, which is going to be very helpful. Diseases and poison can be very debilitating in Morrowind, so having a resistance to both is going to help in our travels. When we go to select our class, we're going to go with a custom class because the warrior preset isn't super optimized in my opinion, having multiple armor and multiple weapon choices in your major and minor skills. Overall, it's better to focus on one weapon type and one armor type to level up that skill faster. You'll be able to visit trainers later on if you want to try out a different kind of weapon or a different kind of armor if you end up having a change of heart. For our custom warrior, we're going to specialize in combat, adding plus 5 to all of our combat skills. Our favorite attributes are going to be strength and endurance to get that plus 10 added to those, since we're going to do a lot of hitting and a lot of getting hit. We'll pick block, athletics, acrobatics, heavy armor, and long blade as our major skills, focusing on attack, defense, and movement. We'll then go with armor, security, mercantile, speechcraft, and marksman as our minor skills. Armor will be good to repair our gear while we're out adventuring. Marksman will be a good secondary weapon option to deal with long-range enemies, security to pick locks, and mercantile and speechcraft to help with bartering persuasion. A noble swordsman should be as sharp with his tongue as he is with his blade, after all. For birth sign, we're going to go with warrior for that increase in attack. That, coupled with our already high longsword skill, will almost guarantee us to hit most targets. Finally, we can see that we're going to start at level 1 with 50 out of 100 for our longsword skill. A great place to be for a novice swordsman on the hostile island of Vardenfell. Let's change gears and talk about setting up a mage character. Like the warrior, we'll need a solid name for a magic user. That should do it. For our race selection, we're going to go with Breton. While High Elves have a higher starting intelligence and therefore more magicka, their weakness to elemental damage and magic in general is a bit of a pain, and can be really frustrating for a new player. The Breton, however, has a solid intelligence multiplier of 0.5 times, plus innate magic resistance and the Dragon Skin ability, which allows you to cast Shield at 50 points for 60 seconds. Your skill bonuses are also all magic focused, except Alchemy, but that's magic adjacent and really helpful when you're trying to make restore magicka potions. Like before, we'll pick custom class, picking magic as our specialization, with intelligence and willpower as our favorite attributes. Remember, those two attributes control how much magicka you have and how well you can cast spells, so very important to have them as high as possible. For major skills, we'll go with Alteration, Destruction, Illusion, Mysticism, and Restoration. Destruction and Mysticism will have a lot of your offensive, elemental, and absorb spells. Alteration and Restoration will have a lot of utility spells like Water Walking, Lockpicking, and Restore or Fortify attribute. Mysticism also has several utility spells as well, like Teleportation Magic. Illusion allows you to charm people, making our lack of Mercantile or Speechcraft less detrimental. For minor skills, we're going to go with Alchemy, Conjuration, Enchanting, Light Armor, and Spear. Alchemy will be very useful when making Restore Health, Magicka, and Fatigue potions. Plus, it'll allow you to craft other valuable potions that you can sell for a high price. Buying spells and enchanted gear can get kind of costly. There's also a lot of exploits you can do with Alchemy, but that's a totally different video. Light Armor and Spear may seem like odd choices, but you'll need a little bit of armor as a mage, otherwise you're just too squishy, making the early game a total slog. Once you have a better grasp of how this game works, you can absolutely give Unarmored a try for that fully classic mage setup, but I would go with Light Armor at least for the start. You'll need a weapon in the early game. Your magic is going to run out, probably while you're in a dungeon fighting something really big and really scary, and you're going to need to fall back on a pointy piece of metal. Spear is a great choice because it has additional reach compared to other weapons, allowing you to hit targets without them being able to hit you. It also levels up your endurance, which is going to be really helpful to increase your health at lower levels, especially since you aren't going to have a whole lot of armor. This is going to work great with Conjuration, because we'll be able to use the Summon Bound Spear spell, which provides Daedric Spear stats, basically the best unenchanted spear in the game, and you get a spear skill bonus on top of it. All of these bonuses to magic skills will actually give us some additional spells as well right at the start. For Birthsign, we're going to keep it simple and go with the Mage. The Atronach sign definitely has the greatest boon to spellcasters, but also the greatest curse, and I wouldn't recommend it on my first playthrough. Give everything one more look before heading out on your adventure. Finally, let's take a look at a general thief setup. We'll need to come up with the best thief name I know. Perfect. For our race selection, we're going to go with Khajiit. They have solid bonuses to most thief-related skills, plus a plus 15 to acrobatics, which is going to help us reach really high places that might not be as guarded as street-level entry. The Khajiit also has the special abilities Eye of Night, basically night vision for 30 seconds, and Eye of Fear, which allows you to cast Demoralize on Humanoid 100 points for 30 seconds. It means they causes them to flee. Click Custom Class once more, and this time let's specialize in Stealth. Our favorite attributes are going to be Agility and Speed, making us harder to hit and much faster, which sounds, really useful for someone trying to rob heavily fortified manor houses and crypts. For our major skills, we're going to go with Acrobatics, Light Armor, Security, Short Blade, and Sneak. Security for picking locks, Sneaking for, sneaking, Light Armor to give us some protection in a fight but not weigh us down, Short Blade for quick slashes and assassinations when needed, and Acrobatics to further increase our jump height to get around defenses and powerful foes. For our minor skills, we're going to go with Alchemy, Marksman, Mercantile, Speechcraft, and Athletics. Mercantile and Speechcraft are essential for selling your ill-gotten goods and weaseling your way out of very tense conversations. Marksman is great for stealthily taking out guards or enemy patrols around soon-to-be-your loot. Athletics is great for increasing your running speed and swim speed, other essentials for a thief. I mean, who ever heard of a slow thief, right? Alchemy might seem like an odd choice, but being able to better craft potions of, invisibility is going to be super helpful when your sneak skills just won't cut it. Plus, being able to sell valuable potions as a secondary source of income is going to help you become the kingpin of Vardenfell that you were born to be. After you've crafted your character of choice, it's time to get this party really started. It's optional, but it'll help you get a bit of gold, is after you pick up your release papers, go over to the shelves in front of that desk and grab the LimeWire platter. Immediately pause your menu. By default, it should be your right mouse click. Then click on the platter and place it outside your inventory, which will drop it on the ground. A guard will run over to you, telling you not to do that again, but doesn't go any farther than that. You can now pick up that platter without any repercussions, and it's super duper valuable. You can then head out of the unlocked doors and immediately turn right into a small room. Take everything that isn't nailed down. I'm talking food, paper, candles, everything. Take it all. We're going to need it to make a little bit more starter gold down the line. You'll also find a lockpick on that table, and a lock chest on those shelves. Lockpicking works by equipping your lockpick by dragging the item and placing it on your character. This is actually how weapons and armor are equipped as well. There's no lockpicking minigame, you just activate the locked object with your lockpick in hand until success or you run out of lockpick uses. Also, lockpicks have different grades, highest being Grandmaster. The higher the grade, the more uses you get out of them. Once we take every single thing of value in this room, and even stuff that doesn't seem valuable, head out through those doors into a small courtyard. Investigate the barrel in front of the next door and pick up the magic ring. This will introduce you to your magic menu. Don't get too attached to that ring, we're getting rid of it. It's outclassed almost immediately, so don't worry. We'll then need to talk to Celis Gravius, who will take our release papers, ask him about Morrowind, and then ask him about duties. He'll give you a package for a man named Caius Cusades, who lives in the nearby town of Balmora. He doesn't know exactly where Caius is, but says to stop by the South Wall Corner Club and ask around. This is the next step in the main quest, but there's a few things we should take care of before continuing on. So let's step out into the small fishing village of Seyda, where we're immediately accosted by a small wood elf walking around. If we speak to him, he'll say that he's lost his ring. It just so happens we found a ring, and if we give it back to him, we'll receive a disposition increase with him and the local merchant in town, Ariel, meaning we can sell all of our stuff for a much better price. Click on barter and start selling everything that isn't the package or directions to Caius or your lockpick. You should net a profit of about 400 to 500 gold depending on your mercantile skill. It wouldn't hurt to buy one of his silver weapons. That of course corresponds to your weapon skill. That iron dagger you have isn't very good. Plus the undead and many other creatures in Morrowind are resistant to normal weapons, meaning only weapons of silver or better, or enchanted weapons, can actually do damage to them. If you're playing a mage, you'll want to spend your new funds on spells, buying everything besides Resist Magicka, Jack of Trades, and Absorb Fatigue. These spells, as well as the ones you already have from your starting skills, are going to give you a decent arsenal right at the beginning of your adventure. Thief and Warrior will want to grab the Probe as well, which allows you to disarm trapdoors and chests. At this point, you can continue on to the town of Balmora, but there are a few things around town that you should probably pick up. To the south of town, there's a little watchtower, and on the western side near the marshes, there's a few hollowed out stumps. With a little jumping around, you can jump from the rocks above on top of one of the stumps, finding an enchanted axe that you can either sell or keep. Off to the north of town, there's a small bog on your right. If you jump from the rocks along the edge of the pond onto the stumps, you can find another one that's hollowed out with an enchanted dagger and about 50 gold pieces. Going right along the northern path out of town, you'll hear shrieking as you see a man falling out of the sky. This is Tarheel, a poor wizard that flew too close to the sun. Loot his corpse. On his body, he'll have an enchanted longsword, robes, shoes, gold, the best hat in Morrowind, and several spell scrolls of Icarian flight. These scrolls increase your acrobatics by 1,000 and are worth a decent bit of gold, but I'd hold on to them. They can be really useful for traversing areas very quickly, but the landing, that's the hard part. There's also the body of a tax collector just west of Tarheel's Fall from Grace. On his body, there will be a tax record and 200 gold coins. This is tied to a quest to find out who killed the local tax man. It seems like Fargoth hasn't been paying his taxes. Interesting. But nothing is stopping you from just pocketing the gold and being on your way. The last thing you'll want to get in Seyda, especially if you're a magic user, is located in the Samaris Ancestral Tomb, northwest of town. Inside, you'll find two undead creatures, either ancestral ghosts or skeletons. Once you've taken care of them, go into the final burial chamber and loot the urn on the table. However, you'll see that it's trapped. You can try and disarm the trap with the probe, or just try and out-heal the damage that's dealt by the trap. Inside the urn, you'll find the Mentor's Ring, which has a constant effect enchantment of Fortify Intelligence and Willpower by 10 points. This is a very, very powerful item, and most spellcasters won't take this off until the late game, if ever. It is also incredibly valuable and can be sold for a very high price. With our prep work in Seyda done, it's time to head off to the big city of Balmora. Well, big town of Balmora. We can either walk there, or take the people of Morrowind's favorite mode of transportation, the Silt Strider, which is basically a giant tick with exposed nerve endings that the Dunmer use as living taxicabs. You can find a Silt Strider in most major settlements in the western and central parts of Vardenfell, but they don't all go to every place that has a Silt Strider port. You may have to have a few layovers as you cross the island to get where you want to go. This is actually a great time to talk a bit about travel in Morrowind. Unlike both Oblivion and Skyrim, Morrowind doesn't have fast travel, at least not in the traditional sense. You can't click on a location and be magically transported there, but that doesn't mean we have to walk everywhere. Like I've said before, we can use Silt Striders to get to many major settlements, and many others have ports or small docks, allowing you to take boats along the coastline with ease. Teleportation magic is also quite common, with local chapters of the Mages Guild allowing members to use their guild guides to instantly travel to any other Mages Guild hall, giving you access to 5 instant teleportation areas scattered fairly evenly across the map. Speaking of magic, you can also cast spells or use enchantments that allow you to teleport yourself to certain locations. Divine Intervention will teleport you to the nearest Temple of the Imperial Divines, while Alchemy Intervention will teleport you to the nearest Dunmer Temple of the Tribunal, the local religion of Morrowind. Finally, there's Mark and Recall spells, allowing you to mark one specific location in Vardenfell. You can then cast Recall and be instantly teleported back to that spot from wherever you might be. You can mark whatever you want, as many times as you want, but you can only recall to that one spot. Using all of these methods effectively, you can greatly decrease your travel time and help deal with most issues with not having traditional fast travel. So, we're leaving Seyda Neen. What now? Well, the whole world is open to you at this point. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. But new players might need some more direction, so let's keep going with the main quest for just a bit. Following the advice from Celis Gravius, let's head over to the town of Balmora and pop into the South Wall Corner Club, located in the southeastern corner of town. If you ask around about Caius Casades, people will direct you to the owner of the establishment. Talking to him will reveal that Caius stays at a place not too far from there, just north, still on the eastern side of town. After a short walk, we find ourselves in a one-bedroom home occupied by a very fit older gentleman who obviously didn't have time to get dressed. This is Caius. We can hand over his package, and if we promise to follow his orders, he'll name us a novice in the Blades, the Emperor's very own network of spies and bodyguards. If we then ask for orders, Caius basically tells us to get a job. Loser. Actually, he wants us to get some experience before he sends us out on some more challenging missions, and this is a really good idea. So, what are a few things we can do? For our warrior-focused characters looking to improve their skills, you should sign up at the local chapter of the Fighters Guild over on the western side of Balmora. You'll get access to a guild chest that contains health potions, repair hammers, and arrows that you can just take for free. You'll also gain access to trainers that focus on martial skills, allowing you to pay some gold for an increase in the skill level of your choice. Magic-focused characters should absolutely join the local chapter of the Mages Guild at the Balmora Guild Hall, which just so happens to be right next door to the Fighters Guild. You'll get access to Restore Magicka potions, some soul gems, and spell scrolls, specifically Alchemy and Divine Intervention scrolls. You'll not only gain access to magically inclined trainers, but also NPCs that offer spellmaking and enchanting services, allowing you to make your very own custom spells and enchanted gear. For the right price, of course. And most importantly, you'll get access to guild guides, allowing you to instantly teleport to any other guild in Vardenfell. Frankly, every character should at least join the Mages Guild for this perk alone. Our sneaky characters should stick around the Southwall Corner Club for just a sec and talk to Sugarlips Habasi to join the local chapter of the Thieves Guild. Like other guilds, you'll gain access to trainers for stealth-related skills, but some guild NPCs will also provide bounty removal services, letting you ditch a bounty without turning yourself in and losing all your hard-earned, rehomed loot. Also, the first few Thieves Guild quests in Balmora are very profitable, making it a really good place to start gathering funds for your adventures. Honestly, at the beginning of the game, it's a good idea to join all three guilds. The amenities they offer, coupled with some really solid starter quests, are going to really help you start out and get a feel for combat, travel, and generally how the game works. However, you won't be able to complete all three. Unlike Skyrim, you can't become the leader of every faction in the game in one playthrough, because many of the factions don't get along or are even actively hostile towards each other. The game will force you to choose where your loyalties lie eventually. There are also several other factions that you can join at the beginning of the game, too. There are the three great houses. The first is House Redoran, mainly located in the city of Aldrune. This house is great for warrior characters looking to focus more on honor and the nobility of combat. The second house is House Hlalu, which just so happens to have a presence in Balmora. This house is the most accepting of Outlanders and has the best relationship with the Empire. Their main focus is wealth, so this is a solid choice for sneaky characters looking to make some coin on the side. Finally is House Telvanni, a mysterious and somewhat hostile group of wizards that live in giant mushroom towers along the eastern coast of Vardenfell. This house is awesome for magic users, They offer great magic-based rewards for a lot of their quests. Just don't expect any of them to like you. Similar to some of the guilds, you can only choose one house to be a part of per playthrough. They're all competing for political power and don't really take kindly to faction members playing multiple sides. Other factions you can join are the Imperial Legion, the Imperial Cult, the Tribunal Temple, and the Morag Tong. These factions don't have a problem with any groups you join, or at least they won't kick you out if you're part of them, and are great side content to complete as well. Okay, at this point you've made your character, you've joined a few factions, done a few quests, and you've probably ranked up enough skills for your first level up. Unlike Skyrim or other modern fantasy RPGs, leveling up is a bit more involved in Morrowind. You only level up when you progress your major and minor skills. You'll need to increase those 10 times in total before you level up. Leveling up also doesn't happen automatically. Once you've increased your skills 10 times, you'll get a notification at the bottom of your screen that you need to rest and meditate on what you've learned. This literally means you need to go to sleep. I really wish I got that message in real life too. You'll need to rest in a bed or in a safe area outside of town. When resting, you'll be presented with the level up screen, where you can allocate 3 tokens to increase 3 attributes. These attributes may have a multiplier next to them depending on what skills you've improved. Leveling up skills that are governed by strength, for example, will cause your strength attribute to have a multiplier next to it at the level up screen. The multipliers work like this. Increase 1 to 4 skills governed by the same attribute, you get a 2 times multiplier for that attribute. Increase 5 to 7 skills governed by one attribute, and you get a 3 times multiplier for that attribute. Increase 8 to 9 skills governed by the same attribute, and you get a 4 times multiplier for that attribute. And finally, increase 10 skills governed by the same attribute, and you get 5 times multiplier for that attribute. So if you really wanted to improve strength, you could focus on leveling up Longsword and be able to allocate 5 additional points to strength every time you level up. Look, don't worry, you don't need to min-max or anything. Just play the game however you like and pick attributes that you want to improve as you go. Besides just swinging a sword a bunch, there's a few other ways you can level up a skill. I've already mentioned trainers, individuals who you can pay to rank up certain skills. Unlike Skyrim, as long as you have the coin, you can rank up these skills until you hit the trainer's level cap, meaning they can't train you past their max skill in said level. Trainers can also only level up your skill up to the value of its governing attribute. So if I want to level up Mysticism, but my willpower is only 45, then my Mysticism cannot be trained past level 45. Training will also get very expensive very fast, so it's difficult to count on in the early game when your funds are kinda low. Besides trainers, you can also find skill books scattered across the world. Reading these books will increase a certain skill level by 1, and it doesn't care about its governing attribute, allowing you to bypass that issue entirely, but only for 1 level at a time. Well folks, it's been a wild ride, and our time together is almost at an end. But before I go, I want to show you a few more resources and tips to help you out with your playthrough. The first is OpenMW, a mod for Morrowind that completely replaces the game engine with a far more stable one. While Morrowind by default works fairly well, on Steam at least, especially for a 20+ year old game, it does have some issues that can cause crashes, bugs, and general annoyances. My first 100 hours of Morrowind were done entirely with the base game, and the biggest regret I have is not using OpenMW sooner. I've played several hundred hours since then, and I've never once encountered even a bug in the base game of Morrowind while using OpenMW. This mod is only an engine overhaul, and the game is basically the exact same as vanilla, with the biggest differences being more quality of life changes than anything else. OpenMW allows you to change settings more easily and give you more control over what those settings are, offering more aspect ratio options, graphical options, and many other things like that. It's super easy to install, taking me about 2 minutes in total, and there's a super handy guide on the OpenMW website, which I've linked in the description, that should help you get through any questions you might have. The only issue with OpenMW is that there are some mods that are not compatible with it. So if you decide to get heavily invested in the modding scene, you may want to look into other patches or fixes. The second thing I want to mention is the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, or UESP. This is one of, if not the best game wiki on the internet. Morrowind's quests can be really confusing at times, and things can be really difficult to locate, relying heavily on in-game directions from quest givers and other NPCs. While I implore you to do as much as you can in this game completely blind, this wiki is an incredibly useful resource if you have any questions about quest steps, locations, items, anything of interest, or even known issues. Basically, any general game question you might have about Morrowind can be found on UESP. I've also included a link to that in the description. The next tip I have for you is to not be afraid to lower the difficulty. Morrowind's learning curve can be a bit daunting to most people and can even be infuriating if you keep dying over and over to mud crabs or something. It's me. I'm the people. The way I really learned how to play the game was by lowering the difficulty to minimum. This allowed me to try different combat methods and learn how to best fight enemies, and to use my various skills without the fear of dying to every single creature I encountered. You can always increase the difficulty later once you feel a little more comfortable with how the game works. I promise you, you'll outscale the difficulty in no time. Much like D&D, Morrowind can get pretty broken once you reach the higher levels, so don't be afraid to crank up the difficulty towards the endgame. Finally, and this might seem strange, you should keep a physical journal. The in-game journal is very basic, not organizing quests, making you sift back through it to find quests that you started ages ago. The journal entries may not even provide all the information that the quest giver gave you, showing more of a summary that can lack key elements of the quest steps. If you want to go in blind, or just want to better keep track of all the quests you have going, keeping a journal that outlines quest giver location, and quest steps is super helpful. Plus, it's kind of cool to have an actual journal. It makes the experience of playing Morrowind more personal, kind of like a single-player D&D campaign, and it really allows for greater depth of role-playing. Making small remarks under your quest steps about why the hell Caius never puts on a shirt really adds to the immersion that you really are a fresh-off-the-boat novice who doesn't know anything about anything. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our time together, and I hope you've enjoyed the video, or at least learned a few things along the way. Listen, I'm no editor, and this video took a lot of work, but if I can convince just one person to give this game a shot, then it was completely and totally worth it. The Elder Scrolls series has been an incredibly important part of my life, and it really does mean a lot to me. Which I know sounds ridiculous, I'm talking about a video game, but it doesn't stop it from being true. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching, and wealth beyond measure, my fellow Outlanders.